All right, let's talk about this Jade Cargill situation because it has taken over the internet. Dave Meltzer, where all good things begin, it begins with Dave Meltzer. He comes out making a statement that Jade Cargill and Shayna Baszler had some heat backstage going all the way back to their match in Scotland, which was in summer of 2024. So at Clash at the Castle, we all know that Shayna Baszler choked Jade Cargill, and Jade Cargill actually tapped out. Now, this was a big deal as it was recorded on television and everybody saw it. Now, apparently there was some heat that stems from this, and they actually got into it backstage after the match. This is, of course, all speculation, but we're now talking about this because the speculation is out there. So Fightful and Meltzer are putting out all these feelers that apparently right after those tag team matches, they had some issues where Jade basically blamed Shayna Baszler for what happened, as Shayna was too snug. Basically, she was strangling her. So this is a digest version of what Fightful said. It says, when asking WWE talent about the Jade Cargill-Shayna Baszler incident shortly after Cargill was written off TV, those in the locker room had been quiet. Since then, it was claimed that Cargill took issue with something that had unfolded, and the word around the locker room was that Cargill had said something to the effect that Baszler needed to learn how to work, which was denied by people close to Cargill. It was said to have stemmed from the match in Scotland when Cargill tapped out in what was supposed to be the finish of the match, which wasn't supposed to be the finish of the match. People close to Cargill claimed she was more disappointed with herself with how things went and was apologetic backstage. Now, that's part one of this situation. And it's easily provable because it was literally on camera and everybody saw it that Shayna Baszler had that chokehold a little too tight. And Jade was tapping her to tell her to let up, but it just happened to get recorded on television. Now, obviously, Jade got called out for this. She got made to look like she didn't know what she was doing, which, to a degree she don't know. But then the second part of this situation picks up, because this is also a digest version of what Fightful says. Upon returning to WWE, the situation got much of the locker room talking was Jade Cargill's promo video that says she was, quote, demanding respect and being surrounded by wolves in the shape of women all around her. At least one talent in the locker room mentioned that this was taken personally by a number of talent as they kept the issue between she and Baszler quiet. Now, this can be proven a little bit because Little Miss Messy Chelsea Green posted a tweet shortly thereafter on the 3rd of March saying, imagine calling your coworkers wolves while demanding respect, and I'm just over here and she's laying on the couch surrounded by some pretty big dogs. So, of course, this didn't make any sense to most people at the time, but once you start, putting the pieces together, it kind of makes sense. Now, let's talk about this in totality. Let's be honest. Jade Cargill came into WWE highly touted, but was seriously she was not ready for the spot they wanted to put her in, which is what took her so long to actually get on television. She was green as grass, admittedly so, because AEW had not fully trained her. She gets put in WWE. She immediately gets put in a tag team with Bianca Belair, which was supposed to, escalate her growth. She gets embarrassed a couple of times. She slips off the top rope in one match. In this tag team match here, she gets choked by Shayna Baszler. She gets an attitude, apparently, with Shayna. Shayna is a legit MMA fighter. Probably wanted to kill Jade just to prove a point. But before we get too far into this, Jade Cargill came into WWE with much fanfare. She was treated like a huge star. She probably got a huge contract. That alone is going to rub people the wrong way. Now, none of that stuff is going to be put out there, but I can guarantee you that plays a part in why so many people have issues with Jade. Not just because she doesn't know what she's doing, but a lot of these people, Shayna Baszler being one of them, have been wrestling for a really long time. And they probably don't make the money that Jade makes. They don't get the attention that Jade gets. They didn't get the push in AEW that Jade got. So there's going to be maybe a feeling that she hasn't paid her dues and that we have to carry this girl to make her look good. Now, I don't know, but Randy Orton has talked about this before, and Batista has also talked about this, that in situations like that, when you are highly touted and you're pushed very fast, you're in a situation where you can make friends or you can make money. And if you choose the money route, then people will accidentally, on purpose, try to embarrass you. And this stuff happens. We saw Bill Goldberg. He got embarrassed by William Regal. William Regal claims that it's a complete accident. But Goldberg backstage is an asshole. And William Regal is always standing up for the boys and, embarrass Goldberg on national television. Wrestlers do this, Obviously, this piece was put out by Meltzer to embarrass Jade, because she was involved with AEW and then she quit AEW and went to WWE. This obviously was a whole thing to make her look bad. But if she has a gigantic ego, which clearly she does, again, she refused to go to WWE before, because she didn't want to give up her name, and she had just had all this stuff, right? And then when she was in AEW, she was hot shit, had her own group, she was cussing on TV, all this kind of stuff. It's common sense where it could be a collection of things, where Jade Cargill has a massive ego, who pops off at the mouth because she doesn't need to wrestle. Her husband is a multimillionaire baseball player. She's basically wrestling for fun. She has a fitness business or something like that, which is why she was in shape before she even got into wrestling. She doesn't really need to wrestle. She's very much a female Lex Luger, in a sense. I don't know if she was a fan before she got in it, but that's neither here nor there. But she's in a situation where she doesn't need to be here. She has a gigantic ego. She looks great. People are willing to push her almost immediately. Like, she got pushed immediately in AEW. She gets pushed immediately in WWE. Everybody's job is to make her look strong. And then she kind of gives you lip after the fact. So now people are going to go out there and kind of prove a point. Maybe put her in a chokehold a little too tight. To kind of embarrass her a little bit. We're going to tweet about her. Subtweet her. All this stuff that's put together. Now, I would say, well, it's just women being women, but it's not women. Because, like I said, this happens to men too. Jade Cargill was put in a position where she was earmarked to be a star in WWE without earning her stripes. Without knowing anybody in the locker room. Which is partially why she was probably put with Bianca. So Bianca could ingratiate her to the locker room. This stuff happens a lot with quote-unquote blue chip young talent. I'm not surprised that this happened. I'm surprised that they kept it under wraps for so long. Now, a lot of people, and I'm seeing this now, were offended by the video. This was the video where all the women being wolves surrounding her. If you take it into account that this is part of the storyline, let's say, because the storyline is who attacked Jade Cargill. And the video is pretty much Jade Cargill reestablishing herself, and maybe she doesn't know which woman attacked her, so they're all possible people who could have attacked her. And it's in storyline that she sees wolves around every corner. It doesn't necessarily have to be literally all these chicks are out to get me. It could be the character thinks all these chicks are out to get me. Now, this is where people can blur the lines, because the video didn't appear on television. She posted it on Twitter. Apparently, she and Ricky Starks and some other guys put this thing together herself. But this video was posted shortly after she returned at Elimination Chamber. So we might be looking too much into a kayfabe video where we're trying to connect dots that might not be there. And I want to make sure that people recognize that is a possibility. The storyline is who attacked Jade Cargill. Maybe she doesn't know, maybe she doesn't care, but she sees herself as, paranoid about all these various people surrounding her. And Chelsea Green's response could have also been in storyline. We don't know. But if you take it for a shoot that this is the case, then I fully understand that, because we have seen this stuff happen before. We've seen plenty of people get great contracts, get big pushes, and then it rubs some people the wrong way, especially veterans, and they go into business for themselves. They go a little rough, they work a little stiffer, they work a little snug, they backbite, they gossip, all this sort of stuff. That's not all anything special about the women's locker room or about locker rooms in general. It's just general jealousy. But we don't know what kind of person Jade is, right? Is she a big mouth, with way too much of an ego? Well, to a degree, yes, we know a little bit about that. But none of this stuff can be confirmed yet. I do believe that she probably did have some heat with Shayna Baszler, as, again, the tap out was obvious, and it was in front of the world, and it was obvious to everybody who was watching why she was doing what she was doing, because Shayna Baszler was choking the shit out of her. And it makes sense that after the fact, she would probably go to Shayna and say, what the fuck was that? You were strangling me out there. And then maybe she gave Shayna a little bit too much lip, and things started to escalate from there. But the idea that, everybody is just trying to protect Jade, so they kept all their heat in-house. I am fully on board with, if you find out that a wrestler is speaking out of turn, like, my mama says something like this, and I really am a big fan of this, and this is kind of where I learned it. You don't talk outside of my house, right? If you hear something going on here, if you're privy enough to be in my house, you don't go out in the world and tell people what's going on in my house. And I would extend that to the locker room. If I find out you're telling Sean Ross Sapp or Dave Meltzer what's going on in my locker room, I will fire you. Period. Because you're causing problems. You're causing issues. And in a locker room, just like in a family, everybody has to trust each other. And if you're going to run off anytime two people get into an argument and tell some dirt sheet guy, I'm going to get rid of you. Because if nothing else, you're going to fuck around and tell them something that's going to cause issues in my locker room. Why would you want to do that? So, no, you don't get special good boy points because you saw Shayna Baszler and Jade Cargill yelling backstage and you didn't say anything. You don't get good boy points for that. That's what you're supposed to do. Just like if you're on a football team and you see the quarterback and the running back yelling at each other, you don't run to ESPN and say, I saw these two guys yelling. They were going crazy back there. So what? They're teammates. They're going to have issues sometimes. You don't escalate things by making it public. And I really have a big problem with that. And I know a lot of the wrestling media works that way. But that's all this stuff does. And when you give this information to people, then they have the opportunity to frame it however they want. They can frame it as Jade has a gigantic ego. She went at Shayna Baszler, who's a legit shooter, and was going to get herself killed. When that might not have even been the situation as it occurred. But because you called somebody and told them, oh yeah, Jade said something to Shayna and then blah, 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 blah. Okay, now he can write the story or tell the story however he wants. And it might not even be how it really occurred. Don't talk outside of your house. Don't do that. Now, in closing, sort of to add a little bit of why I believe this. Now, several months ago, this kind of went under the radar, but back in November, Jonathan Coachman put out a statement that Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair do not get along. Now, he did not elaborate too much outside of Bianca was asked essentially to give Jade the rub, which we talked about earlier. There's multiple, different ways to view this. Bianca is more established, and again, like I said before when I talked about this previously, Bianca wanted to be tag team partners with Jade. So that's why I kind of dismissed this initially, because it was Bianca's idea. When Jade was first signed, and everybody was saying, oh, we got to have that Jade versus Bianca match, and Bianca was like, I would rather be in a tag team with her, rather than wrestle her. And then next, they were in a tag team. And then, but the tag team went on for like a year or two. So now here it is, November. I think this is around the time Jade was about to get written off TV. And Jonathan Coachman puts out there that Jade and Bianca aren't getting along. He doesn't elaborate on why, except that Bianca Belair was a main event wrestler or whatever, and now she's being asked to take a step back from her own career to lift up Jade Cargill, who, of course, as we just mentioned and talked about, is the quote-unquote blue chip recruit. They brought her in to make her a huge star, but nobody knows who she is, and she's not very good. So now you put her with Bianca. Bianca has to do a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of the matches, and she has to ingratiate Jade not only with the audience, but also to a degree with the talent backstage. I'm still not completely sold on this, but it should be taken into account that they did a storyline where they took Jade out of the tag team. Like, just imagine how weird that is, where they just kind of just swapped her out. In the middle of the tag team championship run, they took her out of the storyline and put somebody else into the storyline, right? So that's already quite weird that they would do something like that. So again, once you started adding all these things together, connecting dots, you can come up with one hell of a story that Jade Cargill is probably not very well liked backstage. This being said, it's entirely possible that this is true. When you look at everything in totality, it's entirely possible that this is what's occurring, and that she's not making friends because she probably feels that she doesn't need to make friends. She was brought in to be a star. She has been treated like a star. Everybody talks about her like she's going to be a star. And much like people in the past, like Lex Luger and Randy Orton and so many of these other guys, it probably went to her head. Like, this wrestling shit kind of easy. All I got to do is X, Y, and Z. I'm going to make a ton of money, sell a bunch of action figures, look good in front of my kid, call it a day. All the rest of this shit, don't really need it. Don't need the money, want it, but don't need it. Hubby's got all this money, and she's not shy at all about flaunting all of that, and she's not out there to get hurt. She don't really want to get touched, I can tell you that much. And now people are starting to dig up stuff from AEW, like, oh, she slapped Red Velvet too hard in a segment, or a bunch of other stuff that allegedly happened that we don't hear about until now. But when it comes to the WWE stuff, everything is starting to pile up. Same time, this could just be storyline. Especially the Wolves connection with Chelsea Green's comment could be storyline. But I don't think so. Like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later.
No one does it better.